Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Stool podcast. I am Joey Chalk from King Post Timberworks. I'm joined by some guy, George.
Yep. Hey, there we go, Jordan.
Yep, there he is.
How
As
are
you may have noticed that Robin is not doing the intro as per usual, and I'm making a meal of it. This is a podcast designed for woodworkers and makers in general to get together, talk about stuff, and generally have a good time. Some kind of community spirit is advised.
That's good, man. You're doing well.
Right, let's go. I've got.
All right.
Yeah, that will do. Fine.
That sounds good. So just briefly, a quick announcement is that Robin isn't joining us because he is at the hospital or on his way there to have a baby. So he won't be joining us tonight. So it's just up to me and Joey, and we're going to butcher it.
It's
really
going to be
nicely.
a slaughterhouse. Yep.
Yep.
Just to clarify, he will not be having a baby himself, but he will be in the vicinity of the baby happening.
Yeah.
Thanks, Leroy. I was doing my absolute best. Right.
So what are we working on this week? I guess is the first thing we usually do. So Joey, take it away.
Okay, sure. What have I been working on? Well, interestingly, I posted a video. I'm pretty sure I posted it early this week. This week's gone so quick for me, I can't actually work out which day is what. What was it called? The Wall Hung Entertainment Center thingy-bob video. As soon as I pushed upload or OK, whatever it is that you say, I got flagged by YouTube for something. Got a red button on my video. I believe they didn't like the fact that I had the word hung in the title.
Do you think that's what it is? Hung?
Well, I think it was. And because when you put the tags in, I had like wall hung various ways through like 20 different tags.
Yeah, right.
And it actually came up with a little note to say that I've been flagged, and if I want to be, what do they call it? If I want it to be reviewed straight away, then push this button, and they will review it as soon as it gets the first 1,000 views, or within 7 days, whatever comes first, something like that. And it was like reviewed and kind of green flagged within like 2 hours. So
yeah, right. I've never had a flagged video other than a copyright claim on music. But...
yeah, so I can only imagine it was because I used the word hung.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you're swearing all throughout it or anything. Like
no, so I thought that was interesting. So the other thing I did, I think it was early this week, I turned on the sponsor button on my YouTube channel, which is interesting. I guess it's kind of like Patreon, but I went ahead with it for a couple of reasons. One, that it's on YouTube and I don't have to deal with some other company. It's just I've got everything there. And two, what I really want is to try and have a little bit of extra cash around to give me a bit more time to actually make more videos, because I realized that my video production is slacking off a bit. And so I got some sponsors, so that was cool. I've got 3, I think, this week, so that was cool. And so actually what I'm going to do is provide a sponsors only video once a month. And so I just uploaded my first one of those tonight. And it's really interesting. So usually when you upload a video, you kind of have there's always this, I wonder how many views this will get. I know exactly how many views this video is going to get.
3.
Yeah, it's like, it's a weird, it's a weird feeling to like put all this effort into a video and just to have a few views. And I know like, it's just a weird thing. I'm not sure I'll get used to it, but
I don't know if it's the same for you, but it's when I was doing the Patreon videos, like every time you upload a video, you go back and check it in a few hours and just make sure that it's, you know, it's traveling well and you get your first 1,000 views or whatever. And then when it comes to these private videos and there's one view and there's only 3 people, it's like, is that me looking at my own video or is that someone actually seeing it? It's
So anyone listening out there who feels like giving me some money, push the sponsor button on my channel and you get to see sponsor only videos once a month. And so this video, I've got a small build and a shop tour, which I don't think I've ever done properly. So
cool.
That is on there right now. So I had an interesting little thing happened. I went to measure up a job, which is something I don't usually do at this stage because I haven't been paid any money yet. But I quoted this job up off drawings and they said, great, everything looks good. The lady said, my husband wants to meet you too. Can you come one day next week? I said, sure. We worked out for Tuesday morning. I get there a little bit early. And so I'm talking with the wife about this bookcase, this built-in bookcase. And so then the husband walks in and just kind of everything just kind of went a bit sideways. Like they kind of started having an argument about what they were actually getting made and what color everything was going to be and what it was going to look like. And I'm kind of like, didn't you guys like, 1, talk about this, and 2, look at the drawings that you sent me and that I sent you as well. Suddenly we're on page 4 and I'm on page 1. So yeah, I was like, okay, I've got the measurements. You guys argue amongst yourselves and call me. Needless to say, I haven't got any contact information back from them. You know, I haven't heard back. So
that's awkward to be in. But
well, yeah, it was just a really strange. I was kind of like, well, I thought we were like just about to press go on this.
Yeah.
And now you're like not even wondering if you want to build something. And she's yes, and he's like, oh, I don't know if I even want something there.
Like, every time someone asks me who my main clients are, I always say wives.
Yeah,
it's always the wife that does all the decision making.
Interestingly enough, like probably you've gone through it building a website, but like the guys that built my website were like, who are your target market?
Yeah.
And I've known this because I've had to work it out before, and I notice it. My target market are young parents who are renovating their house for the first time.
Right.
Generally who I make furniture for. Is they've just got some money from the bank. They've added onto the house or renovated the house. They've usually got at least one under 5-year-old kid, and yeah, it's really interesting that I would say 75% of my clients fit into that category.
Yeah, I mean, I with like my advertising and all that sort of stuff, I always select certain demographics, which are generally homeowners or investing owners and all that sort of stuff. But I've never really thought about that category of young couples getting into the home market as being a good place to focus on. So maybe I should reassess, because I have just redone my website.
Generally, that you wouldn't think that would be a good market, but in the people who are able to get mortgages and to do work on their house, they generally want, often, probably good for you, some kind of dining suite.
Yeah, well, I've just had a walk-in customer who are a young couple, like only my age, I'd say. Actually, I know it is because their email address signs off with the same birth year as mine. So, but yeah, they're just about to finish building the first house, and they came just a walk-in customer, and they've come in wanting the dining table, a bench seat for it, 2 stools for the end.
Yeah, cool.
A coffee table after this build, and something else. What was it? But yeah, like a good customer to have, because there's a lot of stuff they want done, and they're a young first home buyer. So
that's cool. Yeah. Let's see. The other thing that happened this week, which is not so much fun, is that I believe that my air compressor has died. which is not cool. Yeah, something has gone kaput.
Is it old belt drive or direct drive?
It's a belt drive. My father-in-law has taken it apart. He's a electrical man.
Right.
He's taken it apart, put it back together. The engine works. I say the engine, the motor, and the belt spins freely. But when you combine the two back together, everything seizes up. So
Might have thrown a bearing or something, or
yeah, it runs really nice. Just when the motor's not on it, it's very smooth, and then the motor itself runs perfectly fine. We actually took it apart. The centrifugal switch had some carbon on it, so we cleaned that out. But otherwise, my air compressor sits on a little lofty thing I built about 2.5 meters up, and it weighs. It's so bloody heavy. It took 4 of us to get it up there, so we're gonna have to get like a block on tackle or something and try and winch it down so we can work on it sometime over the next week.
Yeah.
So that is pretty much my week. I've been doing a lot of painting. Otherwise, my assistant had a couple of days off, so I had to do a bunch of his work as well. So that was fun.
Yeah, good. Must love that.
Yeah.
Cool.
What have you been doing other than sorting out new work, which sounded pretty nice?
Yeah, so not a huge amount. So this week's been not a good starter for me, so won't get into it, but I just haven't had that much motivation to be in the shop, and with no real deadlines, it's just things are going slowly. So I have done some more work on that bookshelf that was mentioned in the last week's episode, but delivery of that's not until the 8th. So I'm kind of hesitant to actually put it all together in its final size and take up all that space and risk bumping into it or knocking stuff into it.
That's a gum one.
Yeah, that's the blue gum one.
Blue gum.
So it's just kind of sitting there as flat pack, ready to be put together. But I haven't really had the need to do it yet or the desire. So that is that.
I saw on your Instagram, perhaps,
maybe,
a lamp thing.
Yes.
That looked interesting. What's going on there?
So as I've mentioned in quite a few episodes, I've got a new laser cutter on its way to me, which is a monster one, and I am working on projects for that. So all week I've been learning how to work with the Fusion 360 features that make all this stuff easy. But basically, I am just making lamps and shades which go along with these really nice German Urco fittings. I think they're German. And that is, so as soon as my new laser gets here, I can start pumping out these projects and hopefully generating, something at least.
So what was that? It looked like that picture that it was made of like round stock or dowel or something.
Yeah, so the actual lamp, so the floor standing one, which I'm trying to design now, not 100% happy with it, but it's a bent lamination is what I'm thinking for the main shaft with a cool bent lamination kind of half lap joint in it. And then with that going on, and then within the lamination, I'll have a void for the cable to run down and basically then attach the lampshade to it. There is a few legalities that I'm not, I have to research because the components that I'm using are all whatever it is, ASA approved, I think is what it's referred to over here. And I'm not doing any of the wiring. So does that mean that my product has to be approved with the same people? Or does that not apply because... But I mean, my sister's a lighting designer, so she's probably a good resource to ask about this stuff.
Over here, you would apart from the electrical work having to be certified somehow, if you were going to sell this as a product at a shop, it would also have to, I believe, it would have to have some kind of flammable risk assessment type thing. to say that
Yeah,
it's
right.
not like it's not combustible in itself if it got too hot, if they used some oddball light bulb that heated
Or
up.
overloaded the system or whatever.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not just going to combust at like 20 degrees or something.
right.
And so that could be to do with finish. I'm not entirely sure, but that would be worth. I mean, it's interesting because it's kind of different if someone were to just to order a client,
Yeah.
you would do those checks presumably, but you wouldn't have to probably go through the same channels.
No. And like the actual, just for the pendant light for itself, that can be sold as a kit as just the pendant light, and it uses a standard fitting that any electrician can install.
Mm.
So the materials that are used have obviously got to meet the requirements of not being, spontaneously combustible or whatever. And I think they're fine. It's just the products that you're selling complete with electrical that big like question mark to it. Because I have got test and tag certification from my theatre work and plugs and tails, so I can do all of it.
I was going to say that as long as it was tagged by a Sparky, then surely that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just a few of those little small details I have to iron out before I get into it. But the design itself is cool, and I'm sure it won't be hard to get that certified. And yeah, basically I've got like 4 or 5 different designs of them that I've done now, which I'm just kind of learning how, and using my smaller laser now to kind of test cut and learn what I'm doing wrong with tolerances and all that sort of stuff.
What's your thoughts for the bent lamb part? Are you going to do, like, will you just make up no, you don't have a CNC. I was going to say, will you CNC a mold up or something it can be repeatable? Or
yeah, so I'll do the mold. I'll cut it myself, obviously, because I haven't got a CNC that big. And then I've got a full vacuum bagging setup. So cool. I'll just make it a one-sided mold, which can slip inside that vacuum bag. And I'd probably actually make it a lot wider than just one at a time, because they're only like 50 mil diameter or 60 mil diameter. So I'd make it maybe 150, 180 mil wide blank, and then just cut it down the middle. And then can make 2 out of 1 bagging.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
What else have I been doing? There's that. Already touched on the job that I got over the weekend, which is the dining table and stools and bench seats and all that, which is awesome.
Did you want to touch on the visitor you had just before the podcast?
Oh, yes, I should actually, because that's kind of cool. So yeah, I was saying just before we went live to Joey that I had the original tenant of this complex, this unit in this complex 45 years ago, pop in and say hello for old time's sake kind of thing. And we got chatting, and he turned out to be a toolmaker by trade. But when he was in this unit, he was building a boat, a 32-foot boat in this unit, which I don't know how it really fit because the door is so small, but he did. But when I took him out to show him my latest acquisition, which is the vintage Lang lathe, we got talking and saying, "Oh, this is missing, and it's a shame because it came with the threading box, but the half nut assembly is missing, and the manufacturer over in the UK that can reproduce parts for this is too old, blah blah blah." And he kind of just stopped me in my tracks and said, "Look, I've got a perfectly restored lathe, which is about this capacity, but nowhere near this heavy, which I restored about 5 years ago, and you can, come down to my workshop and have a look, my shed, and have a look. And if you want it, you can have it for $400. So it's like, I'm starting to get a collection of lathes. So I'm going to go down and pop in tomorrow. But from what he's saying, it's a complete lathe that comes with a couple of face plates and chucks. It's got a tailstock, which is nice, because the one I have doesn't. It can do threading. It's got all the gears changed out for different threading pitch and all that. And basically, what he's saying is that it's been restored and it has very little backlash and blah, blah, blah. And it's basically just plug in and go. So I'll go have a look because I already have got $450 set aside for a replacement drill press, which I'm happy to wait. I can actually save $50 and get a lathe and just wait for a little longer. So yeah, it was really
interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens tomorrow, but it's
just have to stack them on top of each other or something.
Yeah, exactly. Or I'll just put it in my new showroom. So.
yeah, a nice clean space.
Yes. Here's the dining table that you ordered. Ignore the lathe. But I don't know. What else? I think that's about it, really. It's not been much this week. So,
all right. Cool. So I thought that this week we could talk about any jobs that we have got planned, like kind of dream jobby type things where you've got a lot of inspiration and you want to get this thing made, but for whatever reason, either money or I don't know what it could be. It hasn't happened yet. I've got two things, and actually one of them I've just started. So I'm kind of breaking my own rules, but so I put on Discord, the Discord chat that we have for the podcast, a picture of a Lego playing area box thing that I'm going to make for my son. Well, I've started making it, and I've just posted actually something on Instagram, a little shot of it. And it's interesting. It's one of those things where this job in particular I hadn't been thinking about for a long time, but it's when a job crops up and it just goes straight to the front of the queue as far as your drive to get it done. Sometimes you might have 3-4 jobs on, but one of them you're just way more excited about, and so you kind of put all your attention on that instead of probably the ones that you should be working on.
Yeah.
And this one is like that for me, and I've got like 3 or 4 weeks to get this done, and I'm like smashing through it, and I'm actually trying to slow myself down a little bit because I'm like, what am I going to do when this is finished? Where is it going to go? It's just going to sit around in the workshop,
getting dusty,
and that person who it's for will see it, and then what do I do? So I'm like, I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do with it, but so that's kind of my idea of like that drive when a job just pops up and you just get really excited about it, and you just got to do that one. So the long-term idea I've had, I came up with this idea right around Christmas time, because we just moved into this house and it was really hot, and we're like, we need an outdoor table, but we also need shade, and we're not going to put like a permanent roof type thing over our deck because it's going to block too much light coming into the rest of the house, blah, blah, blah. So we need some kind of shade over our table. So I came up with an idea. I've made quite elaborate drawings, actually. So I'm going to build a table where one of the legs, so let's say this maybe is going to be 2 meters by 1 meter wide. But one of the legs is going to be a fairly substantial beam that carries on through the tabletop up to, say, 2 meters tall or something. And then from there, like a pergola will hang over the table itself off the actual table.
Like a cantilevered roof sort of thing.
Yeah. So my idea is to have from that corner leg, a beam will then run diagonally across from corner to corner, and then a roof will everything will be cantilevered by half, kind of hanging off this one beam. And it's taken quite a lot of drawing to get it there, but I want to make it out of Iroko, mainly because I had a big chunk of it left over from that outdoor sofa I made a while ago. and two, a neighbor of mine just dropped off a whole bunch of Iroko that was an old bar top, and I bought it off him for like $200. So I've almost got enough timber to actually start making this thing. I'll probably just need to buy another couple of pieces. What I've found though with Iroko is when the end sits in the sun, it likes to check, even if it's well dry. It will check about 50 mil up the board because I've had a stack of it sitting, some of it in the sun, and it's just started checking. So I was at my local library the other day, and I noticed they had a whole bunch of cedar boards as a kind of pergola, and they had little copper caps over the top, over the ends of every one of these boards. These are like 70 by 70 planks of cedar.
Oh, I'm not sure if that's me.
Like, and
Okay.
Somebody in the chat, write something.
Okay, Joey, you are having some problems. Okay. Maybe we'll just give it a few seconds and see if you restore.
Can you?
All right. Well, while we wait for Joey's connection to stabilize, can everyone still hear me in the chat? Am I still clear? I'm going to assume I am.
Can you hear me, George?
Okay, yep, you're coming back.
Okay. I didn't do.
Oh, no, you're not back.
What should I get a new one, Bo?
All right.
I'll go away and come back.
Okay, enjoy. All right, while we're waiting for Joey, let's talk about a... Wow, this is weird, just talking to everyone myself. What was my dream kind of project is what I should be talking about, and that is a low back chair. So when I finished my TAFE course, which was in furniture design, I designed and built a prototype low back chair. The issue with that, though, was that I built it out of pine and I never got the geometry quite right. And for that, I thought, you know, that's something that I will be easily be able to remake, but I never did. So that would be my project. I have a lot of things in the chat and I'm getting distracted. Sorry for my train of thought. Joey, are you back?
I'm back, apparently.
Okay, cool.
What'd I miss?
You missed me trying to ramble on.
You should have just started reading the phone book or something.
I know, right? Robin goes for one episode and it all goes to hell.
That's all right. He can edit this out, can't he?
Oh, I hope so. Good. All right.
Okay.
So we were kind of on the copper caps was where it kind of stopped coming smooth.
So there's copper caps on the end of all these pieces. Presumably, it just looks, well, it does look cool, but it's going to actually help with the checking, I think. So my question is, just two questions. Do you think that having a copper cap over the end of a piece of wood that wants to check, do you think it's actually going to help prevent that? I mean, presumably it's still going to heat up in there, but
maybe if you made it like a shrink fit instead of just a loose thing that you epoxy on. Do you have like a butane or a MAP gas cylinder or something?
Yeah.
Like if you just heated it up, not to the point where it starts to go green because that's ugly on copper, but heat it up and then have it on there so it shrinks onto the actual post, that could prevent it because then it's actually a compression joint. So you'd have to have it.
That'd be pretty tight. So that would come into the next question: is that how do you make them?
Yeah. So I don't know. what materials they're available in, but Medallia Steel over here, I don't know if you have a similar, but it's like a steel merchant in Australia. They do all the capping for pergolas and stuff in various sizes. So maybe someone like that could have an equivalent. But yeah, how would you make it?
My first plan was to like stamp it out like they used to make old pots, where you just have like a die and a big ram kind of, but I imagine using thin gauge copper would probably end up tearing actually.
Yeah, you need to anneal it quite a lot before you attempted stamping it.
So then I thought you could just kind of cut a square out, cut the corners, and just bend it on the actual piece of timber itself around the end of the timber, and like solder up the corners.
Yeah, you could braze it together, no worries. That wouldn't be too hard.
My question then is, oh yeah, rivets. That's a good idea. If you brazed it or soldered it, can you sand that? So, because usually when I've seen brazing or soldering, it leaves quite a lump, I guess a bit like a weld.
Yeah, you can grind them off. The only thing you've got to be careful with,
grinding everything away though.
Like yeah, that's the thing. You got to kind of do a scarf joint with it and use the correct flux so that it does flow into it. But no, you can definitely braze, then grind, then buff, and you won't see it. Or if you see any, it's like a hairline of the solder that you use or the brazing rod that you use.
Yeah, it's interesting. So there was a question or a comment just before about wouldn't having moisture in the timber stop it from checking? And yeah, for a couple of reasons, I actually was really surprised that I saw some checking in this timber. And in actual fact, that outdoor sofa I built, they talked to me about having some checking a little while ago. And I was a bit surprised. I saw it, and then when I saw it in the pieces that I had laying around in the workshop, so their pieces outside in the moisture, and when the sun hit it and it just heated up super hot, that's when the end checked. And like I say, it stops about 50 mil in, but it's like, and it's a really oily timber, so I wonder if it has something to do with it as well, that it just is drying out. The oil is just drying out too much.
Yeah,
right at the end.
Or maybe because it is so waxy when you put your finish on, it didn't actually absorb deeply.
Yeah.
Maybe you had to thin finish way more to get that.
Well, that's why I use teak oil to actually get in there, and so the thinners in the teak oil is meant to get through the natural oils of the timber. But
yeah.
But that's why I thought, well, if I capped all these pieces on this table contraption, am I just making a lot of work for no reason? Or, it's definitely going to look cool.
I think it would still check no matter what, but it might limit how far it can spread, because it will want to stem from the end anyway.
Yeah.
Like, you know how I don't know the actual term, but it's on boats, on the the sticky uppy bit on the hull on the boats, and they often have like that metal cap, the copper or whatever it is, brass caps kind of hammered onto them.
Yeah, right.
Like I don't know if that's the reason they do it or if it's just a tradition, but a lot of those wooden boats have got that metal capping on it.
I like the idea of who said, Gareth said about using the rivets, because if you used quite long rivets, you could kind of rivet it to the timber, like not just rivet the sheet metal together.
Yeah, at least hold it as a holding pin anyway.
Yeah, it would kind of stop it from flying off at least.
Because you could just wrap a band around, so you fasten one end, wrap the band around really tight, and then rivet that together, cut it, and then you're doing banding instead of capping, but it's doing the same compression on the grain, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if you did it that way and then folded it over the end on all four sides. It would be like a reverse cap, and then you could put a rivet on the end. I don't know if that would look very good or not.
Just maybe a moisture trap if you're not careful.
That's true.
Yeah.
But that's also what I'm wondering is if you put caps on all these bits of wood, are they just going to be little cups of water themselves?
Yeah.
Probably doesn't matter with oily wood, but yeah, I don't know.
Sure. It's a tricky one.
Yeah. So I've got it's kind of annoying me because I've got this big grand idea for this awesome giant table and roof, and I'm kind of stuck if I should carry on with my idea at this point.
What about that impregnating epoxy stuff, that ultra thin?
Right, yeah.
Like you could just seal it up as good as you can with the epoxy.
Just on the end grain.
Yeah.
That's actually not silly.
Because I mean that's what what's his name, Matt Cremona, I think, did with his outdoor table with that thin epoxy. So that could be one option.
Did he epoxy it first and then use the epiphanes?
I thought he did. It might have been it may have been the Wood Whisperer, but one of them definitely did a thin epoxy on it. And it seemed.
I'm actually really impressed at the way his table has lasted. I just saw a video of him
washing it off,
washing it off, and it looks mint.
Yeah, I was one of the cynical few that said, "Oh, you're gonna regret doing that. It's gonna last you one season."
Yeah,
it's still looking good.
So it'd be interesting to see if he gets any lifting on. It just takes one little piece of a film finish to have a wee chip, and then it just goes the whole thing.
Marine grade varnish, though, the epithane, isn't it, that he used? I think.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. They're quite expensive from what they say. Have you got any jobs that you've been plotting and planning?
Yeah, so I was saying really, really badly while you were leaving and joining the room again that when I was studying furniture design, I designed and constructed the prototype of a low back chair, which I never got further than the prototype stages and always intended to. And it's nothing it's not overly complicated, but it is a nice proportionate chair, and you can really kind of sink into it if you want to, or you can use it as a study chair at a low coffee table. So to me, the prototype was really good and comfortable, but once I left, once I finished my course, I never kind of got around to doing it again. So what I really it's something I've wanted to do basically since I started doing this as my job, not even my full time, but taking on commissions, was to remake that chair and change a few things, like the backrest. Instead of it being upholstered, I want to make that a solid, a solid carved board, and do some different joinery techniques. Because when I did that, the rear leg and backrest is one piece of timber which is carved out, and then the front leg joins into the rails. And I want to change the joinery I'm using there. To go from the dowel construction that we did with a prototype and to actually make it like sliding dovetail for the braces and all that. So I just want to kind of up the classiness of it.
Have you still got the
prototype?
The prototype and stuff?
Yeah, I do, and I still have the original templates as well.
Oh wow!
Go ahead.
So it wouldn't be a massive stretch to lay out new templates, and you've got all the proportions essentially done.
It would be very little work. The things that are tricky is that the rear leg, which transitions into the backrest, I want to kind of introduce a curve to it so that they're not angled into each other at 10 or 12 degrees, whatever it is, but so that the top is actually twisted around so that they are parallel to one another and not facing in. And that would mean that slotting in the backrest would be easier, but I could also make the wood blank deeper, so I could carve more away and have more relief. And then maybe even have on that a very low firm foam cushion that doesn't wrap the whole thing, but is actually adhered to the backrest.
Do you do your own upholstery?
I do. I mix and match. So usually I do, but if it's a thing that really matters, I have an upholstery shop just down the road.
Yeah.
But
I've got a local upholsterer, but they're kind of in the same game we are.
Right.
So they're doing all one-off stuff commercially, and it's just way too expensive to get them to do like a one-off piece for me to then sell to a client.
Yeah.
So I actually find it difficult to get decent upholstery prices. But
the like a really reasonable place here is Foam Sales or something is what they're called, and they're actually just a foam shop, but they offer like you tell them the size, they'll cut the foam and cover it for you. Right. And I didn't think that would be all that good over here. Like, I thought, that would be cheap, not high-end upholstery work. But I actually got them to do some things, and it came out really nice, like better than anything I could do, that's for sure. So,
was it like an online order type thing?
No, they're a physical shop. I think they're a chain from memory, maybe. But yeah, they do it, but it doesn't feel like getting upholstery done when it's just cushions. It's just, size cushions.
I suppose.
Like with this one, the base is actually a wrap around and tacked upholstery over a wooden frame, and then you do the webbing and everything on it. So it does have to be finished quite nicely for it to look acceptable. Would be a word. If
it's something that I have never learned how to do, and I don't even know where to start, is making a frame for a mostly upholstered seat or sofa. Like it's like
with the webbing and all that, or
no, like just for the timber frame. Like what shape does the frame have to be, and how much allowance do you make for the sponge to be pulled and curved and bent this way and that way, and especially with the older styles, like where you have pieces of timber in the armrest exposed, and it's like, what shape is the rest of that piece of wood that adjoins the frame, but you leave that little part sticking out? Like I've no clue how that works, and I would really like to investigate that.
Yeah, I would love some actual real like industry knowledge on it, because I've always just kind of gone with what feels right. But there's so many techniques that I don't even know. Like you can do, it's like a tack strip that you fold into the fabric that you're overlaying, and then you hammer the fabric directly into the rail.
Yeah.
And that's what I tried on this prototype, and it came out okay.
Yeah.
But you can see where it's kind of bunched up, or the fabric's not stretched evenly, and there's like a little bit of a tight section here, and this section's a little bit too loose, and then this section's just right.
I've always assumed that they have like a rebate in the timber frame that the upholstery is tacked into, so you end up with an almost flush transition between fabric and timber if you're having an exposed piece.
Yeah,
like that's what it seems like is happening, but I haven't worked it out.
No, and the thing, like, I've asked a few people at the Wood and Craft Show here in Perth who are selling the upholstery suppliers about that, and they've never really given me a clear answer.
It seems like an older school skill set as well, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, okay. I think that is done there. Yeah.
All right. Let's hammer through this. We're a little bit early, but we will go on to what we have been watching. Unless anybody's got some questions, we can jump onto that, but we can talk about what we've been watching as well. I usually go first, so I might as well go first again. I didn't actually watch this video because I listened to it on the podcast. So it was Adam Savage's Make a Fair Sunday sermon. And this year they didn't call it on the tested channel. They didn't call it Sunday Sermon. They just called it like Adam Savage's talk at Maker Faire, which is odd because Maker Faire now officially calls it his Sunday Sermon. So who knows?
Maybe a.
But yeah, anyway, on the tested podcast, Still Untitled, they actually played this 15-minute talk at the end of their podcast. So it's a live recording, and I just didn't even know it was on there. Just listened to it after the podcast finished. Super awesome. Like he's just the guy is so passionate about what he does, and it ends up being quite a very deep talk about why we make and what it means. But a really tangible takeaway thing that I got from this speech was, and he just said it in passing, but I thought, especially George, for you and me, he said whenever he makes anything like a one-off piece, he always makes two of them. That way he has one to do what he wants with, and then the other one he either sells or gives away to a friend. And it just got me thinking, like, yes, okay, for some things we can't just straight up make two whatever giant bookcases or whatever it is. But especially for things like freestanding furniture, tables come to mind, especially when you're setting up machinery and stuff for a one-off piece. It takes no extra time to run an extra piece of wood through that machine. So apart from the outlay of buying some extra materials to make whatever it is, it seems like a really good idea to, seeing as you're being paid for that time by the client, why not make another one of those things and sell it off, even if you sell it a lot cheaper than what you sold it to the client for, as long as you're making money more than the materials. It seems like it should be worthwhile to me.
I think it would depend on the situation, because like I have considered that, but the issue I would have is if you make it and it's not for someone, it's no guarantee that anyone's going to buy it, for one, so you may be stuck with it for ages. But then if you sell it cheaper than what the original client paid, and they find out, it could come and have a negative effect on you.
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, I like the idea, especially with small things, but if it was, a table or a bookshelf or something like that,
it gets a bit tricky, especially that you have to store it until it sells.
And if it's a custom-made piece, which is specific to that home or whatever, it's a little bit risky. But I do, especially on things like my mirrors or this lamp that I'm making in the future or something like that.
Yeah.
Like totally, I'd make multiples of those because, well, it's a design which should sell, and if it doesn't sell, it doesn't take up too much space anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely some, there would be some like guidelines or kind of limitations about what works. Anything that's a generic type piece of furniture would be fine, and anything that is mainly machine made. I mean, there's no point making two sets of drawers if they're all hand cut dovetails, because you're just killing yourself with time. Like, that's not affordable. But if it's something you can just run through the table saw and throw some dominoes in, and you've got a box, then you might as well make two of them. So anyway, that was my pick. I thought it was really worthwhile little piece of information. Mine this week, I'm all about the lathes, as I'm undergoing a lathe restoration project again, and I found a cool channel called Makershires. The project I found him on was for him making his own metal lathe, and I don't mean just welding a few bits of steel together, but he actually he made a foundry so he could melt his own aluminium and then do his own sand castings and pour each component, and then he hand scraped those components into flatness, and then once he got to a certain stage in the lathe, he was able to make a temporary spindle and start using the lathe that he's building to start surfacing the parts which are making the lathe. And it's just like the amount of work that went into this project is insane, and yet
all the videos, I think there's like maybe 12 or something, are short enough to be not dragging on. They're entertaining, and it's just cool. Like,
Was it? What's his name?
Makershires is his channel.
Okay.
He's got a new project on the go now, which is he's making his own metal shaper in the same fashion. So he's casting his own things, but like through it are heaps of really cool techniques and tips, which you just kind of learn from his old school books. Like he's building these from a reference, and then these old school ways of thinking before computers were even a thing are the ways that it's teaching him to machine these things. So super cool channel, really entertaining. Obviously it's not woodworking, but he does good woodworking on his channel. So very cool to watch.
Okay, there is one question here we could kill a couple of minutes with. Look, so who was it? Gareth. How long did it take from business startup to feeling confident and making money? That's a good question. I'm not sure that I feel I'm not sure that I feel entirely confident.
It depends on which day you ask me.
Sometimes I was
right, and sometimes it feels like it's
definitely fluctuates. So I would say the first, people seem to say that the first 5 years is the make or break in a business, and if you're going to fail, you're going to fail in the first 5 years. And I guess that's true, but also if you're just stupid and persistent, perhaps like myself, maybe you should have stopped a long time ago, but you just keep struggling through because you like what you're doing, and you you almost make enough money. I would say the first year for me, like there was just a lot of growth. There was a lot of new inquiries, and that felt really good, getting constant new kind of inquiries come in. But once you get used to that kind of that flow of work, then there's, and I'm sure we've talked about this before, there's that whole, am I actually making money, or am I just kind of making more work for myself? And that is still a question to be had and answered.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is only really my second year of full-time trading. So I claim this is my second year of, business, because with a rebrand and all that crap. But in reality, I've been doing it for 4 or 5. And I mean, I'm at the stage where my business is generating income, which is really good for second year of full-time. A lot of people don't make any money in the first couple of years at all. In fact, most people lose money. And as far as my business goes, I'm in a good position. If I would just stop, buying crap that I don't need, I might have actually had some money in my bank account. But because, my business is making money, but I'm not necessarily. Like, I'm staying afloat and all that.
Yeah.
And 1 month is really great, and then the next month, like this one, is a bit quiet, and that's really disheartening. And it's like, maybe I should just go get a job for a few days a week, and then fall back to making this part time. But then you get a customer walk in or an email come into your inbox.
That's right, and everything changes.
And instantly you go from this defeated feel to, all right, what I'm doing is actually working. And
and also I say often, it tends to happen when you're right at that point where you're like, oh man, maybe if I got a job 2 days a week somewhere else, and then you get an email and you're like, oh my God, if I had that 2 day a week job, I'd never be able to take on this giant job that just came in the door.
Yeah, exactly.
And so,
the places that you would want to work as well, not really, like, it's either your competition or they wouldn't accept for 2 days a week or something.
Right.
Like that. So it's a hard perspective. But like for me, the first year of trading, I just for reference, I think I was 12 grand in the negative. So like that was after setting up, doing workshop move, doing heaps of transport, getting everything kind of worked out, and that included a car purchase. But then I made that up this financial year and I'm in the positive, but because of personal situations with like personal finance from when I was, working full time for a touring company and all that, I didn't have $35,000 to pay out that loan. So I've still got that debt and I've still got a bit of the credit card debt. So while business is like there, it doesn't feel like it for me because of my prior, concessions or whatever you want to call it. So it's easy to get disheartened with it, but really 2 years is my thing before it starts swinging well.
Okay. All right. Well, we will call it there, I think, for the evening.
Yeah.
So thanks to everybody who is watching and listening. We will be back the same time next week. Hopefully Robin will be back to steer the ship away from the rocks
and to and save us.
Yeah. So until then, everybody have a good week and see you later.
And just quickly, congratulations to Robin if you're listening to this.
Yeah.